Sometimes you can feel life's turning points coming. Something small, a decision, maybe just a simple action can flip your entire world upside down. That afternoon, as I left the house to return the food processor to Wayne, I somehow knew this wasn't just a routine errand. I was 45 and Gail, at 50, was away on yet another business trip. I'd been trying to get used to these absences for years, but this time felt different. He had left the processor with me, knowing I'd have to return it myself. I borrowed it from Wayne. "You can take it back," he'd said. Just like that, everything was simple for Gail, but not for me. I took a deep breath before knocking on Wayne's door. My heart was racing. Maybe it was Wayne's calm, composed demeanor that drew me in, or maybe it was the feeling of being lost in the monotony of my marriage. Whatever it was, I felt like something different was waiting for me behind that door. I didn't think much of it, but how could I have known that I was about to experience something that would shake my marriage and me to the core? I knocked on the door and waited a few seconds. No sound came from inside. I knocked again, this time harder. Still nothing. Then I noticed the door was slightly ajar. A wave of unease swept over me. Wayne was a cautious guy. Leaving his door open wasn't like him at all. Something had to be wrong. Maybe he'd fallen or something worse had happened. If you love hearing stories like these, don't forget to follow this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss out. And trust me, Amy's story takes a really tragic turn. You'll want to stick around until the end. "Wayne," I called out as I stepped into the doorway. No answer. The silence pressed down on me, heavy and strange. I took another step. The air inside was warm, carrying a faint scent of soap. I thought maybe he was in the shower, but I wasn't sure. "Wayne, are you okay?" My voice wavered slightly. Still nothing. My heart began to race. What if something had happened? What if he needed help? I moved toward the direction of the bathroom. The sound of running water was the only noise breaking the silence. The bathroom door was slightly open. My uneasiness grew. Could he have died? Maybe that's why he wasn't answering. I hesitated for a moment, my rational side screaming at me to turn around, to leave, to not get involved. But I couldn't. If something had happened and I didn't help, I wouldn't be able to live with the guilt. Taking a deep breath, I gently pushed the door open, and then I saw him. Wayne was standing in the shower, completely naked. Water streamed over his body, mixing with the steam that filled the room. For a split second, our eyes locked. I was stuck somewhere between shock and embarrassment, but the thought of looking away or leaving didn't even cross my mind. The surprised expression on Wayne's face slowly softened into something calmer. "Amy," he asked, his voice a mix of surprise and a strange kind of relief. I was just. The words got caught in my throat. Suddenly, I felt completely exposed and vulnerable. What was I doing here? How had I let this happen? The door was open, and when you didn't answer, I got worried. I finally whispered, my voice so quiet from embarrassment it was barely audible. Wayne stepped back, ran a hand through his wet hair, and turned off the shower. As the sound of the water stopped, the only thing I could hear was the pounding of my heart echoing in the room. "I'm fine," he said, his eyes locked on mine, "but I guess neither of us really knows what to do right now." For a moment, Wayne hesitated, but the surprise quickly disappeared from his face. Water still trickled down his shoulders as he looked at me with that calm, collected gaze. He seemed so unbothered, like he was trying to diffuse the awkwardness of the moment. Without any rush, he reached for a towel hanging on a hook nearby. "Guess I gave you a bit of a scare," he said with a slight smile. He wrapped the towel around his waist, his movement so confident it left me momentarily unsure of what to do. "The door was open, and when you didn't answer," I said again, my voice still trembling slightly. My heart was racing, but something about Wayne's calm demeanor was oddly comforting. "The front door lock's busted," he explained as he tightened the towel securely around his waist. I was going to call someone to fix it after I got out of the shower, but seeing you so worried surprised me, and I'll admit it made me feel kind of good too. I felt my face heat up, my cheeks burning with embarrassment. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. My eyes were glued to the water dripping off his skin, and his confident posture. "I'm sorry," I finally managed to say, lowering my head. "I just thought something might have happened." Wayne took a couple of steps closer, but not too close. He kept just enough distance to not make it uncomfortable. His voice was warm and reassuring. "Amy, thank you for being such a good neighbor. Honestly, having someone worry about me, it's been a while since I felt that." My throat tightened, I didn't know what to say. Wayne's kind yet disarming presence was far more than I'd expected. His sincerity reflected in his eyes calmed me in a strange way, but also left me feeling a bit unsettled inside. "Well, I actually just came to drop off the food processor," I said, gripping the box tightly in my hands. I felt Southwest out of place, unsure of how to handle myself. Wayne let out a small laugh. "Ah, the food processor. Clearly a matter of great importance," he teased with a playful look in his eye. "But I feel like I'm breaking neighborly etiquette by keeping you standing here like this. How about I make us some coffee, if you're not in a rush, that is." I didn't know how to respond. For a second I thought about staying for coffee, but at the same time, I wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. The image of him in the shower was still burned into my mind, and my heart hadn't slowed down. "No thanks," I said finally, forcing a smile. "I think I should get going now. Gail will be back soon, and I've got stuff to do before then." Wayne nodded slightly, understanding in his eyes. "Of course, but don't worry about the door, I'll make sure it's fixed today." He paused for a moment, his voice dropping to a softer tone as he looked at me. "I'm lucky to have neighbors like you." His words stirred something inside me, an odd feeling I couldn't quite place. I quickly nodded, set the food processor down near the door, and turned to leave. But as I walked away, I could feel Wayne's eyes lingering on me. On my way back home, my mind was a complete mess. Seeing Wayne like that, his ease, his charisma, why had it made my heart race so much? How could such a simple encounter stir something so intense inside me? When I got home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Wayne, so relaxed and confident in the shower. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't erase the image from my mind. What bothered me the most, though, was the thrill I felt when I turned down his offer for coffee. Instead of acting like a grown woman, I bolted like some awkward teenage girl. "What am I doing?" I muttered to myself, pacing aimlessly around the kitchen. That's how I spent the entire night, trapped in my thoughts. No matter how much I tried to push it down, his gaze, his voice, even that warm smile of his kept replaying in my head. The next morning, I tried to focus on my errands, but I couldn't concentrate on anything. It was like something was poking at me, telling me I needed to fix things. I'd left Wayne hanging by turning down that coffee. I'd been rude, and I had to make it right. By the time the afternoon rolled around, just as the sun was starting to set, I glanced out the window and saw Wayne. He was standing by his car, wiping it down with this absent-minded look on his face, like he was lost in thought. His movements were calm and deliberate, as usual. I watched him for a while, completely caught up, losing track of time. Taking a deep breath, I decided this was my chance to make things right. I straightened myself up and opened the door, stepping out into the yard. "Wayne!" I called out. He looked up at me, that usual warm smile spreading across his face. "Hey, Amy. How's it going?" he said, putting the cloth down for a moment. I forgot what I was going to say, then I pulled myself together and managed a small smile. "Yesterday, I turned down your coffee offer. I had a lot to do, really, but I didn't mean to leave you hanging. I'm sorry about that." Wayne tilted his head slightly, his expression still warm. "No worries at all, Amy. I get it. I want to make it up to you," I said, this time with more confidence. "The sun's about to set, and you've been working hard. Come over for coffee. I also baked a new cake, I'm pretty sure it's amazing. Wayne hesitated for a moment, but his expression didn't change. That sounds great, he said with a soft smile, but I don't want to trouble you. It's no trouble at all, I said quickly. It would actually be a pleasure. The look that crossed Wayne's face in that moment filled me with an odd sense of happiness. I'd already prepared the coffee and cake, but deep down, what I was really looking forward to was the warm conversation. Maybe it was just his presence that made me feel a little less alone. But as I stood there in those seemingly normal moments, with everything in the house looking just as it should, the restlessness inside me only grew. Gail being overseas was supposed to mean everything was fine, that life would go on as usual. But for me, it wasn't that simple. Right now, in the stillness of my home, with my eyes closed and my thoughts swirling, I couldn't feel at ease. Wayne, he was just a neighbor after all, so why did I feel this way? Yesterday, when I saw him in the shower, I hadn't realized how deeply it had affected me. Just a brief moment, but the power of that moment stirred something inside me. That charismatic, confident stance, the way the water dripped from his hair, and the way he looked at me, could a person's eyes really hold so much? In that instant, everything changed. I knew without a doubt that Wayne didn't really know me, and I didn't know him. But still, there was something unspoken between us, a pull we both felt. And then came the coffee, that strange conversation. It felt like we'd known each other for years. Such a simple, natural connection made it easy to forget we were practically strangers. There was no awkwardness, no distance between us. It was as if our paths had crossed before somewhere in the past, and now we'd found each other again. Slowly, we were being drawn closer, but I tried to fight it. I was a married woman, I had built a life with Gail. Wayne's wife had passed long ago, but no matter how I looked at it, this was something entirely new for me. The pull between us was so strong that the guilt bubbling inside me only made it harder to breathe. Wayne took a sip of his coffee, then looked at me and kept talking. Life, Amy, it doesn't always go the way we expect. Everything can change in an instant, just like today. Maybe sometimes we need to dig a little deeper to figure out what our soul really wants, he said. His words seemed simple, but they hit me right where it hurt. His voice was so calm, yet so confusingly intense, that I found myself hanging on to every word. Suddenly, his voice became the only thing I could focus on, drowning out everything else around me. Slowly, I lowered my head, my eyes lost in his. There was still some space between us, but it was closing fast. His warm gaze burned through me, lighting a fire deep within. Our eyes met, and for a second there was silence. Every thought in my mind vanished, there was nothing but Wayne's gaze. I couldn't look away. My heart pounded wildly, and as it became harder to gather my thoughts, I realized my body was instinctively leaning toward him. I took a step forward, then another. My eyes were locked on his, and my soul felt like it was drowning in him. We didn't stop, not even for a moment. We just looked at each other, the pull between us grew stronger and finally, it silently exploded. In that moment, Wayne's hands gently reached up and touched my face. There was nothing else but right now, no Gail, no house, no responsibilities, just this moment. It felt like nothing else existed but the two of us. We stayed like that for a few seconds, watching each other, and then everything shifted. I tilted my head slightly and leaned in toward his lips. There wasn't a single moment of hesitation. I let go of the guilt, the passion, the overwhelming feelings, and kissed him. As we moved closer, I felt just how deep this moment really was. There was no thought in my head, only the magic of what was happening. That kiss, more than anything else, belonged to us. We were hours far away from the rest of the world, in a place that only the two of us could reach. All night long, we held each other like the whole world was just the two of us. I didn't notice how time passed, how our bodies grew closer, how everything between us deepened. It was all I needed. Somehow, Wayne's presence gave me a sense of safety. Being with him felt like finding peace, but it also left a wound in my heart. We weren't just carrying the night, we were carrying each other. Everything was so complicated. When morning came, I opened my eyes and found myself wrapped in Wayne's warmth. It was a peaceful awakening. No matter how messy it all was, in that moment, everything felt like it was exactly where it should be. As I opened my eyes a bit more, I heard Wayne's calm voice. "You okay?" he asked. When I looked at him, his charismatic gaze, those deep eyes looking straight at me, hit me like a wave. The intensity of that moment, the void inside me being filled, it really felt like a dream. "I think I'm okay," I said, resting my head to the side. There was still an emptiness inside me, but Wayne's presence was so calming it made me feel a bit lighter. We stayed silent for a while, just soaking in each other's presence. Then Wayne spoke slowly, Amy, this wasn't supposed to happen. But talking to you, being with you, I felt like something about it was right. Still, I know we made a mistake. We need to stop this now." His maturity, the understanding in his voice, eased the chaos inside me, even just a little. As I listened, my heart started pounding harder. "Yeah, Wayne, you're right," I said. This was wrong. I love Gale. I've built my life with him. But being with you in this moment, I don't know, I felt so much. But it can't happen again. I don't deserve this." Wayne nodded slowly, his expression serious yet soft. "We shouldn't have gone this far, Amy. But I love you. I really do. And now we need to know when to step back." The gentle yet firm tone of his voice told me everything was over. It was so hard stepping back after all the warmth, after all that closeness. In the end, Wayne leaned in and kissed me again, but this time it wasn't fueled by passion. It felt like goodbye. That kiss carried a promise, one we both understood. "I'll stay away from you now, Amy, but I love you," he said. And in that moment, I knew it was the end for us. Wayne turned and walked away slowly, disappearing. My eyes stayed on the empty path where he'd been, staring into nothing. I felt something had ended, something had been left behind, but the complicated love and longing I felt for him would always stay with me. Gale came back after a while. Life started returning to normal, but something inside me was missing. After Wayne left, there was this emptiness inside me. I had built a life with Gale. I had to stay loyal to him. But Wayne's absence cut right through me. I can't stop thinking about that shower, Wayne's bare body that night. I can still feel how everything shifted under the water, how intense it all became. It went by so fast, like nothing existed before or after. Suddenly, we were holding each other, and it all started with a kiss. By the end of it, it felt like we had known each other for years. Wayne's presence gave me peace. Talking to him felt like the weight of the world had been lifted from my shoulders. That warmth, those deep looks, the certainty in his voice, it all felt so real, like nothing else mattered outside of those moments. But now it all feels like a dream. When Wayne decided to move away, it felt like the end of everything. He told me he loved me, but by putting distance between us, by stepping back, I responded with, "Yeah, you're right. It won't happen again." But deep down, I carried the weight of it ending. I felt so much that night, but I couldn't express any of it. Gale was always the same. While he was abroad, the house felt empty. His lack of attention, the silence, honestly, I hadn't felt like this in a long time. Gale's presence brought a kind of unease, but at the same time, it offered me nothing. Slowly, I was left alone with the growing void inside me. Gale and we were just so different. It felt like we couldn't understand each other anymore. After those quiet days, the warmth of Wayne's presence kept creeping into my thoughts, and Gale's indifference grew like a festering wound. But now, with Wayne gone, how do I feel? Something's missing, a gap, a deep emptiness. And here's what I know, the life I share with Gale in this house doesn't feel comforting anymore. His disinterest only reminds me of how valuable Wayne's warmth and closeness really were. Now I feel like I'm lost in this void. Everything's so messy, so uncertain. Wayne's leaving has left an even bigger emptiness inside me, mixing with Gail's indifference. Two men, two completely different worlds. I love one, and the other I don't even know. But one thing's for sure, neither Wayne's departure nor Gail's neglect feels like it's going to fill this emptiness inside me. And now I'm stuck with these tangled emotions. The impact Wayne left on me, combined with Gail's indifference, has left me wondering where my life is even going. On one hand there's love, on the other there's loneliness. And me, I'm just here trying to hold on to the life I've built while thinking about the peace Wayne gave me. I'm unable to figure out which path to take, knowing whether this is the right thing or not. That question, that confusion, it's exhausting. If you made it this far, I know this story must have hit you hard. There's so much more to share, and trust me, you don't want to miss any of it. Hit that follow button, turn on notifications, and don't forget to leave a comment about what you thought. I'm dying to hear your perspective, so let's talk in the comments. Your support means the world to me.